London didn't panic when it realized something was wrong. It did something far more dangerous. It began to reason. Fear no longer moved like fog. It sharpened, narrowed, learned. The city that once refused to look now stared too hard, searching for a shape it could name, a face it could blame, and in doing so, it made its first fatal mistake. Because the man they were looking for was already standing among them. He heard the change before he saw it. Fear had a sound now, not screams, not whispers, but pauses. Conversations cut short. Laughter that ended too quickly. Doors closed with intention instead of habit. London was no longer merely afraid, it was alert. And alert cities made errors. Constables walked with forced confidence, boots striking stone louder than necessary. Patrols lingered where they once passed through. Lanterns were carried higher, as if light itself could interrogate the dark. It couldn't, because darkness was not where he hid. He adjusted without effort, slipping into the city's new rhythm, as naturally as he had learned the old one. Where others hesitated, he reassured. Where fear caused distance, he offered proximity. He spoke calmly, walked openly, remained visible because nothing frightened a frightened city more than a man who appeared unafraid. People noticed him more now, and trusted him because of it. Names were exchanged in low voices, patterns were discussed behind closed doors, theories were built on coincidence and desperation. The river, the docks, foreigners, gangs, madness, anything distant enough to feel controllable. No one wanted the truth, because the truth was close. He watched investigators fail with quiet interest. They chased noise instead of absence. They searched for violence instead of patience. They expected cruelty to announce itself loudly, to leave marks that demanded attention. They did not understand restraint. They did not understand him. Yet something unsettled him. Not fear of discovery, but the city's growing need for resolution. London had begun to crave an ending, and endings required someone to blame. That was dangerous. So he became useful. He spoke to constables when spoken to, offered observations that led nowhere, confirmed suspicions that felt productive but proved hollow. He guided attention away from the quiet spaces and towards the obvious ones. The city rewarded cooperation. Doors opened more easily. Questions softened. His presence became reassuring proof that order still existed, that danger was somewhere else. But then came the night he did not anticipate. It was not planned. It was not chosen. It arrived through error, a witness who looked twice instead of once. A street too quiet. A moment stretched half a second longer than it should have. Eyes met. Not clearly. Not long. But long enough. The witness never saw his face fully, never heard his voice distinctly, never understood what they were seeing. But they remembered the calm. And calm, in a city built on fear, was unforgettable. By morning, descriptions had changed. Not accurate, but aligned. A man who did not hurry, a man who seemed known, a man who belonged. The city was circling something real now. He felt it tighten around him, slow and deliberate, like a noose pulled by many hands that did not yet realize what they were doing. For the first time, he considered distance not disappearance, but transformation. He could not leave. Leaving would confirm everything. So he stayed. And in staying, he crossed the line he had avoided for years. He allowed himself to be seen. More often. More clearly. More deliberately. If London wanted a figure, he would give it one a shape harmless enough to satisfy suspicion, familiar enough to dissolve it. He positioned himself near authority, near routine, near the idea of safety itself. The city relaxed slightly. That was when the second mistake was made. Because the closer London drew him, the more control he gained over its fear. And fear, once guided, could be shaped into obedience. He began to choose differently, not the invisible, not the forgotten, but those whose disappearance would mean something. And when they vanished, the city would finally understand that it had not been facing chaos at all. It had been facing intention. Somewhere in the distance, bells rang not in alarm but habit. Another night passed, another absence was noticed. And as London prepared to name its monster, it did not yet realize the truth. The man it was searching for was helping it search. London was no longer searching blindly. It was searching selectively. Questions became quieter but more precise. Doors were knocked on later in the evening when people were tired enough to speak carelessly. Names were written down more often than they were erased. The city had begun to learn how to remember. He felt it in small ways. A constable who asked the same question twice. A neighbor who watched from a window longer than politeness allowed. A pause in conversation that lingered just a fraction too long after he entered a room. Suspicion had not found him, but it had brushed against him. He responded with discipline. Every word measured, every movement rehearsed without appearing rehearsed. He became helpful in public and forgettable in private, a balance he had perfected over years. Where others grew nervous, he remained calm. Where others avoided attention, he accepted it lightly. Calm, he knew, disarmed fear faster than denial ever could. The city rewarded this behavior again, and that frightened him more than hostility would have. When fear began to trust, it stopped protecting itself. He noticed the change in his victims before anyone else did. They were no longer simply alone, though they were watched. People moved in pairs, locked doors sooner, memorized faces, and yet when he spoke to them, when he offered guidance or familiarity, that vigilance dissolved. Fear made people desperate for certainty, and certainty was something he projected effortlessly. The night he chose next was colder than the others. Wind scraped along stone walls, carrying voices unpredictably. The streets were not empty, only quieter than expected. He hesitated for the first time in years, not because of conscience, because of calculation. This disappearance would be noticed quickly. The city would not dismiss it, he knew that, and still he proceeded. The act was clean, efficient, almost identical to others except for one thing. Someone was closer than anticipated, not watching directly, not interfering, just present. A shadow at the edge of the street, a figure that paused when it should have continued, eyes that followed without understanding what they were following. He left immediately. By morning, London was different. This time, the city did not whisper. It leaned inward. People gathered in doorways, taverns filled early, conversations sharp and directional. The name of a street was spoken again and again, as if repetition alone could summon answers. The authorities reacted faster than before, too fast. Constables retraced steps that were already fading. Witnesses contradicted one another loudly. Descriptions grew confident without growing accurate. The city wanted closure, and that urgency fractured the truth. He observed all of it with controlled detachment, until he heard his own description. Not his face, not his height, his behavior. Calm, polite, familiar. That was dangerous. Behavior could be recognized, faces could change. He realized then that the city had learned enough to ask the wrong questions, and that made him vulnerable in ways he had never been before. So he changed strategy. He allowed himself to be questioned. Briefly, casually, publicly. He answered without hesitation, without defensiveness. He spoke as someone mildly inconvenienced, not threatened, and it worked. Suspicion passed over him like fog over stone touching, but not settling. Still, the margin had narrowed. He began to feel watched in places where he once felt invisible. Not followed, observed, measured, weighed. London was not hunting yet. but it was preparing. At night, alone, he revisited moments he had never revisited before, not out of regret, but analysis. He identified the exact second control had slipped, the precise alignment of chance and error. He adjusted his internal rules accordingly. No more proximity. No more witnesses within distance. No more indulgence. But even as he refined his restraint, something deeper shifted. He no longer felt separate from the city's fear. He felt responsible for it. Not emotionally, strategically. Fear was now a resource. It altered behavior. It created opportunities. It forced people into predictability. And predictability, once mapped, was exploitable. London was afraid in the wrong ways, and he could correct that. As weeks passed without another disappearance, the city's tension stretched thin. Relief tried to surface, but suspicion kept it submerged. People wanted to believe it was over, and that desire made them careless again. He noticed doors left unlocked. Routes reused. Trust reintroduced prematurely. The city was repeating itself, and repetition was invitation. He selected carefully this time, a target that balanced visibility and denial. Someone important enough to matter, but not enough to unite the city fully. The disappearance would confuse more than it would clarify. When it happened, London did not erupt. It froze. This was different. This could not be explained away. The city hesitated on the edge of understanding, staring into the space where certainty should have been. And in that hesitation, something irreversible occurred. A connection was made, not by proof, not by evidence, by instinct. Someone, somewhere, connected the calm man they remembered with the silence that followed his passing. It was not accusation, it was recognition. And recognition, once born, did not need facts to survive. That night, walking alone beneath dim lantern light, he understood that the game had changed again, not ended, shifted. London was no longer merely afraid. He was beginning to understand that the danger was close. And for the first time since this began, he allowed himself a single, dangerous thought. If the city truly saw him, would it still invite him inside? The realization did not frighten him. It sharpened him. London was no longer guessing. It was feeling. And feelings, unlike facts, could not be disproved. They spread quietly, person to person, glance to glance, until suspicion no longer needed language. He sensed it in the way people adjusted their paths when they saw him coming. Not avoidance correction. A step to the side, a hand tightening around a coat, a look exchanged between strangers that said nothing and meant everything. The city had begun to recognize a pattern without naming it. That was dangerous ground. Authorities intensified their presence, but not intelligently. They widened their reach instead of narrowing it, flooding streets with uniforms and questions. The city mistook visibility for control, noise for progress. He let them. He spoke when asked, offered himself as a reference, a helper, a witness. He positioned himself where danger was least expected, near order, near routine, near men who believed themselves immune to deception. That was when he noticed the constable. The man was not aggressive, not suspicious in the usual sense. He did not press questions or raise his voice. He listened too carefully, watched too long, asked about details others dismissed. The constable did not want a confession. He wanted alignment. That was new. He adjusted his behavior immediately, less presence, fewer conversations, tighter routes. But the damage had been done. Recognition, once sparked, did not extinguish easily. The city's fear had found an anchor. A rumor surfaced quietly, cautiously. Not a name, but a description that lingered. A man who was often nearby. A man who appeared after disappearances, not before. A man who never seemed afraid. The description fit too well. He realized then that his greatest strength, calm, had become his most visible trait. So he did something he had never done before. He let fear touch him, publicly. He allowed his voice to waver in conversation, let concern show in his posture. He spoke of the city's danger with genuine unease, mirroring the behavior of those around him. Fear, performed correctly, dissolved suspicion faster than denial. It worked. For a while. But London had crossed a threshold. The city no longer needed certainty. It needed reassurance, and reassurance demanded resolution. Someone had to be close. Someone had to be known. Someone had to be wrong. He felt the pressure tighten around him, not from evidence, but from proximity. Too many small impressions converging, too many half-memories, aligning in the same direction. Then came the near collapse. A witness stepped forward. Not with proof, with conviction. The person spoke of a man who had offered help on a fog-heavy night, a man whose voice was calm, a man whose presence felt safe until it didn't. The description was incomplete, flawed, unreliable. But it was close enough. Authorities listened this time. He learned of it indirectly through changes in behavior. Patrols shifted, questions adjusted. The constable watched him openly now, no longer pretending indifference. The city was narrowing. That night, for the first time since it all began, he prepared for the possibility of loss. Not escape that would have been surrender, but contingency. Routes mapped differently, contacts avoided, visibility reduced to the minimum required to remain unremarkable. But London was impatient. Fear demanded answers faster than truth could provide them. And in that impatience, the city made its final mistake. It rushed. A public accusation was whispered too loudly, shared too freely, repeated before it could be examined. The idea spread faster than confirmation, attaching itself to the wrong details, the wrong moments, the wrong man. He heard the name spoken one evening in a crowded tavern. Not his, someone else's. A relief so sharp it almost resembled laughter passed through him, quickly suppressed, carefully hidden. The city had found its focus. A substitute. Someone visible enough to blame, strange enough to fear, close enough to feel satisfying. The pressure around him loosened immediately. Glances softened. Conversations resumed. Patrols shifted elsewhere. The constable stopped watching him and began watching another. London exhaled. And in that exhale it condemned an innocent man. He did not interfere. Interference would have been foolish, dangerous, and unnecessary. The city had done exactly what frightened cities always did, chosen comfort over accuracy. He walked freely again. But something had changed inside him. The near discovery had not deterred him. It had confirmed him. London could be guided. Fear could be redirected. Truth could be bent without breaking. And as long as the city needed answers, more than it needed certainty, it would continue to make the same mistake. That night, standing beneath a lantern that flickered like a dying thought, he understood the full extent of what he had become. Not a shadow, not a rumor, but a presence the city itself protected by refusing to look in the right direction. And as bells rang again, marking another ordinary hour, he knew with absolute clarity. The city would not stop him. Not because it couldn't, but because it didn't want to. London wanted an ending, not the truth an ending. Something firm enough, loud enough, final enough to silence the fear that had settled into its bones. The wrong man was exactly that. A shape fear could recognize. A story that could be told without hesitation. The city closed around him quickly. Whispers became statements. Statements became certainty. People repeated what they had heard until it sounded like memory. The accused man's past was examined with retroactive cruelty, every mistake sharpened, every flaw reframed as inevitability. London rewrote him into a monster. He watched from a distance as it happened. Not with satisfaction, with comprehension. Crowds gathered where lantern light burned strongest. Taverns buzzed with confident conclusions. The same people who once lowered their voices now spoke loudly, relieved to be united again. Fear had found direction, and direction felt like safety. The constable who had once watched him stood among them, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the substitute culprit. He did not look convinced, but conviction mattered less than momentum now. Momentum carried everything. He passed through the crowd unnoticed, close enough to hear the man's name spoken with certainty, close enough to feel the city's relief like warmth against his skin. For the first time, he understood something unsettling. London felt grateful. Grateful to be spared doubt. Grateful to be spared self-examination. Grateful to be spared the idea that evil had worn a familiar face. That gratitude sealed the lie. The accused protested, of course. Weakly at first, then desperately, but desperation only confirmed guilt in the eyes of a city that had already decided. Innocence required composure, and composure was impossible for a man watching his life collapse. He saw it clearly the moment the city stopped listening. That moment frightened him more than any patrol ever had. Because if London could do this to the wrong man so easily, it could do it again. And one day, it might choose better. The thought did not drive him to mercy. It drove him to urgency. That night, as the city slept more peacefully than it had in months, he moved again, not out of need, but out of declaration. This disappearance would not fit. It would not align. It would fracture the story London had chosen to believe. The act was precise, restrained, undeniable in its timing. By morning, the city hesitated. Confusion rippled outward as news spread. The disappearance contradicted the narrative. The accused was already held. The danger was supposed to be contained. Fear, which had briefly rested, stirred again. London did not want to wake. Authorities scrambled to reconcile contradiction. Some dismissed it as coincidence. Others argued quietly, voices low, eyes wary. The story they had sold no longer held its shape. He listened and realized something critical. London would not correct itself. Once committed, it would rather bend reality than admit error. The innocent man would remain guilty. The contradiction would be absorbed, explained away, forgotten. That realization changed him. If the city could endure lies so comfortably, then truth had no power here. Only control did. He did not feel triumph. He felt clarity. The near exposure, the false accusation, the city's relief, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. London was not hunting him. It was protecting itself from knowing him. And as long as that remained true, he could walk its streets freely. Still, something lingered, a residue of danger that refused to fade. The constable returned to watching. Not him directly. The spaces around him, the absences, the moments that didn't align. One mind, he realized, had not accepted the city's answer. That mind mattered. He began to feel the weight of time. Patterns could not be denied forever. Even cities grew tired of pretending. The margin for error had narrowed beyond comfort. Another evolution would be required. He considered disappearance not flight, but erasure, to stop, to let fear settle into memory, to allow London to seal this chapter and move on. But the thought left him cold. Stopping would give the city closure. Closure would free it. And he was no longer willing to give London that mercy. As dawn broke, pale and indifferent, he stood at the edge of a familiar street and watched people begin their day safer, calmer, convinced the nightmare was ending. They did not see him. They never did. But for the first time, he wondered how long that would remain true. Because somewhere in London, A single man was still looking, not for comfort, not for answers, but for alignment. And alignment, once achieved, did not require permission. It required patience.